Looking ahead at the major economic news to come this week, South Korea is to release data on its export and import figures as well as consumer prices for May. And the U.S. is set to publish its Beige Book survey of economic conditions. Seo Eun-kyung has a rundown.
The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy will release the export and import figures for May on Tuesday. Preliminary data from the Korea Customs Service showed the trade volume between May 1st and 10th in the country saw a surge compared to the same period last year. Exports soared close to 81% and imports climbed over 51%, indicating an economic rebound for both the domestic and the global markets. Compared to the same period last year, exports of automobiles, automobile parts and petroleum products largely contributed to the sharp increase. In terms of imports, crude oil and automobiles were the major contributors to the rise. Statistics Korea on Wednesday is set to release the Consumer Price Index for May. The data for April showed the biggest increase in almost 4 years. That came largely on the back of price increases of nearly 13% for agricultural, livestock and fisheries products, following the poor harvest and rising global oil prices. When it comes to the May figure, the agency said it expects a continuous rise for the time being, mainly because both global and domestic economies are picking up from coronavirus-led recessions. On the same day, the Federal Reserve will release its Beige Book. The latest report said that the U.S. economy accelerated at a moderate pace from late February to early April, backed by increased COVID-19 vaccinations and strong fiscal support. The improving labor market was also said to be a major factor. Released 8 times throughout the year, the Beige Book surveys the current economic conditions across the 12 Federal Reserve districts. The Beige Book will be used as a basis for the Fed's next policy discussion on June 15th to 16th. Seo Eun-kyung, Arirang News.